The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was standing in my kitchen, still in my pajamas, holding a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. I almost didn't pick up. The number wasn't saved, but the area code was from back home, and something in my gut told me to answer anyway. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me already knew. Zoe. My mother's voice. The way she said my name, not as a greeting, but as an accusation. Like I owed her something just for existing. We're here. Come let us in. I set the mug down very slowly on the counter. Here, I said. Where's here? Downstairs. Where is here? Downstairs. The lobby. The man at the front desk won't let us up without your permission. I walked to my window and looked down at the street. There was a yellow cab idling at the curb. My father was standing on the sidewalk with his arms crossed, looking up at my building the way he used to look at my report cards, like he was already disappointed before he even opened them. My mother was beside him, and next to her was my brother Caleb, 26 years old and wearing the same expression he'd had since he was 14. That particular mix of entitlement and helplessness that had always made adults rush to smooth things over for him. They had luggage, 3 rolling suitcases and a duffel bag. I stood there for a long moment. Outside, traffic moved. The sun was doing that particular thing it does on clear Manhattan mornings, where it turns the glass on every building into something that looks almost warm. My mother shielded her eyes and looked up, and even from 12 floors away, I could see the moment she spotted me in the window. She waved. Like we'd made plans, like this was normal. I let them up. I know some of you are already asking why. I've asked myself the same thing 100 times since. The simplest answer is that I wasn't ready. Not in the way you'd think. Not emotionally. Not sentimentally. I mean, I was not prepared. My hands were still shaking slightly from the shock of the phone call, and I hadn't had time to think clearly about what I was going to say. And some very old and very stupid part of my brain defaulted to the first thing it learned. When your parents show up, you let them in. I had 4 minutes while they rode the elevator. I used them to put on real pants. Let me back up, because this story doesn't make sense without the 2 years before it. I'm an architect. I work at a firm in Midtown. I've been there for 3 years, made associate last spring, and I've spent the last 18 months as lead designer on a mixed-use development in the South Bronx that I am genuinely proud of in a way I don't have many words for. It's affordable housing on the top floors, retail and community space at the street level, and a rooftop garden that was my idea, and that my firm almost cut twice for budget reasons, and that I fought for both times. The project broke ground 8 months ago. That's not the point of the story. But it's important context, because my career is the thing my family decided I was wrong about for the better part of a decade. My parents wanted me to go to medical school. This is the part that's hardest to explain to people who didn't grow up in a household like mine, because they wanted me to be a doctor sounds like a minor disappointment. Not the years of silence and contempt and slow, deliberate erasure that it actually was. My father is a pharmacist. My mother is a nurse. My brother Caleb chose pre-med without a moment's hesitation, and for that, he was the son that the whole family orbited. I chose architecture. I was 19. I had just finished my first year of college with straight A's in my design coursework, and I was more certain about it than I have ever been certain about anything in my life. I told my parents over Christmas break, sitting at the kitchen table with the good plates still out from dinner, and the silence that followed was the kind that changes the temperature of a room. My father looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "That's not a real career." I said, "I respectfully disagree." He said, "Then you can fund it yourself." That was the deal. Not stated warmly, not offered as a challenge to grow from, stated flatly, like a door closing. They would not pay for architecture school. They would not contribute to housing, books, supplies, or anything else. If I wanted to make this choice, I would make it entirely alone. I said okay. And then I did it. I worked 25 hours a week all 5 years of school. I took out loans for tuition and paid off chunks of them every summer with internship income. I ate a lot of ramen. I slept maybe 6 hours a night for most of my 20s. I graduated with honors, passed my licensing exams on the first attempt, and moved to New York with $1,100 in my checking account and a job offer I had worked 18 months to earn. My parents did not come to my graduation. My brother sent a text that said, "Congrats," with the thumbs up emoji. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because it's the foundation of everything that came after. You need to understand what the 2 years of silence actually meant in practice. Not a dramatic falling out, not a screaming match, not some clear moment of rupture. Just nothing. My calls went unreturned. My texts read and unacknowledged. I sent my mother a birthday card and got nothing back. I found out my grandmother on my father's side had been hospitalized through a cousin's Facebook post. I found out she had died the same way, 3 weeks later. My grandmother had told me once when I was maybe 15 that she had set aside money for me. Not a huge amount. She was not a wealthy woman, but something. She had said she wanted me to have it when I turned 25, as a start. When I turned 25, no one called. When I asked my father about it in a carefully worded email, he replied 3 weeks later with 4 sentences saying the estate had been settled and there was nothing left. I hired an estate attorney. She told me that without documentation, it would be very difficult to make a claim, and that the costs of pursuing it would likely exceed whatever the amount had been, and that she was sorry. I thanked her and paid her invoice and did not cry until I got home. That was the last time I tried to reach my family. I was 25. I was in New York, I had my work, I had friends who had become something closer than family, and I made a decision, not with anger, not dramatically, just quietly and with a kind of tired clarity, that I was going to build my life without them. For 2 years, that's exactly what I did. The elevator doors opened, and there they were. My father walked in first, the way he always walked into rooms, slightly ahead of everyone else, like he was leading a procession. He's a tall man, my father, broad-shouldered. He has a way of taking up space that I think he's completely unconscious of. My mother came in behind him, and she was already looking around the apartment with that particular expression, head slightly tilted, lips pressed together, that I recognized from years of family dinners and school events. The face that meant she was calculating the difference between what she expected and what she was seeing. What she was seeing was a 2-bedroom apartment on the 12th floor of a building in Brooklyn Heights with floor-to-ceiling windows and original hardwood floors and a kitchen I had spent 4 months renovating to look exactly the way I wanted it to look. Caleb was last. He rolled a suitcase in and let it hit the doorframe. "Nice place," my father said. It did not sound like a compliment. "Thank you," I said. "Can someone explain to me what's happening?" My mother looked at my father. My father looked at me. Caleb sat down on my couch without being invited. "We need to talk about Caleb," my father said. Here is what had happened as I would come to understand it over the next hour. Caleb had graduated medical school 2 years ago. My parents had paid for all 4 years. Not loans, money they had. Money they had apparently been accumulating for a long time for exactly this purpose. Caleb had matched into a residency program in Chicago. 9 months in, he had left. The reasons were complicated, or at least the version I was given was complicated. Burnout, a difficult supervising physician, a series of events that were, depending on who was telling the story, either Caleb's fault or definitively not. What was not complicated was the financial situation. Caleb had taken out personal loans during his gap period. He had spent more than he should have during residency. He had made some investments that had gone badly. He owed money to 3 different creditors. Private loans, a credit card balance, and a personal loan from a colleague of my father's that now had my father's name attached to it. The total, when my father finally said the number, was $114,000. "We can cover about $40,000, my father said. "We've done the calculations. If you contribute $50,000, that handles the personal loans. We can work out the credit card on our own." I heard myself laugh. It came out before I could stop it. Not a mean laugh, just a surprise one. The kind that happens when something is so far outside the range of expected reality that your body doesn't have a better response. "You need $50,000 for me," I said. "You've been doing well." My mother said this with a kind of careful neutrality, like she was complimenting a stranger's garden. "Your firm has a good reputation. We looked into it." "You looked into it," I repeated. "Caleb issue," I repeated. "Caleb is your brother," my father said. "This is what families do." I sat down in the chair across from my couch. Caleb was looking at his phone. He had not made eye contact with me once since he'd walked in. "Caleb," I said. He looked up. "What do you think about this conversation?" He shrugged. "Mom and Dad thought you might be able to help." "And you? What do you think?" He looked back at his phone. "It would be really good if you could." Something settled in me then. Not anger. I want to be clear about that. Anger is loud. What I felt was quieter and older, like the last small hope of something finally going dark. "You haven't spoken to me in 2 years, I said. Not to Caleb specifically. To the room. No call when Grandma died. No response to any message I sent. You let me find out my grandmother passed away through a Facebook post from a cousin I've met twice. I paused. And you need me to write a check for $50,000. That has nothing to do with this, my father said. It has everything to do with this. Zoe. My mother used the voice. the voice that meant, "You are being dramatic. You are making this difficult. You are choosing to cause a scene. Your brother is in trouble." "I understand that," I said. "I'm also aware that my grandmother left me money that I never received, and that nobody in this room has ever acknowledged that either." The silence that followed was a specific kind. Not the silence of shame, but the silence of people who have decided not to engage with something uncomfortable and are waiting for it to pass. My father straightened in his chair. "We didn't come here to relitigate old grievances. We came because we need your help." "I know why you came," I said. "I'd like you to let me think." "There isn't a lot of time. I'm asking for a few minutes," I said quietly. "Please." He stopped. I got up and went to my kitchen. I put the kettle on, not because I wanted tea, but because I needed something to do with my hands. Through the kitchen window, I could see a sliver of the harbor and a cargo ship moving slow and enormous across the water. I thought about my grandmother. I thought about the estate attorney's careful, apologetic face. I thought about $50,000, which was not money I didn't have. I'd been careful and lucky, and it saved aggressively, but which was also a number that represented years of choices I had made alone, without anyone in that living room. And then I thought about what I actually knew about Caleb's debt, and I picked up my phone. I have a friend named Petra who does financial consulting. We met in grad school, stayed close, and she has bailed me out of more confusing financial situations than I can count. Not with money, with knowledge, which is usually worth more. I texted her a question. She called me back in 4 minutes. We talked for 11 minutes. I asked her specific things. She told me specific things. When we hung up, I stood in my kitchen for another minute, and then I went back to the living room. "Okay," I said. "Tell me exactly who holds the personal loans." My father looked surprised. "Why does that matter?" "Because it matters to what I'm willing to do," I said. "Who holds them?" he told me. 2 of them were private lending companies, the kind of firms that deal in distressed debt, which meant the loans had already been sold once or possibly more than once from their original holders. The third was a fintech lender with a specific loan servicing arm. I asked for the account numbers. My father said he didn't have them on him. I asked Caleb. Caleb looked up from his phone, startled, and said they were in his email. "Pull them up," I said. He did. I looked at the numbers and the balances and the interest rates. Then I sent 3 emails from my phone. "What are you doing?" my mother asked. "Research," I said. The responses came back faster than I expected. One within 20 minutes, one within the hour. The third not until later that evening. What I was asking, in carefully professional language, was whether the debt holders would consider selling the loans. Distressed personal debt changes hands constantly. It's an industry. The creditors would rather have guaranteed money now than pursue collection over months or years. I was not offering to pay Caleb's loans. I was offering to buy them. Petra had explained the difference to me very carefully. If I paid the loans, the debt was erased and Caleb owed nothing to anyone. If I bought the loans, the debt remained, but Caleb would owe it to me. My father didn't understand this distinction yet. My mother didn't either. Caleb definitely didn't, because Caleb had been looking at his phone for most of this conversation. While I waited for the responses, I ordered dinner for everyone, because I had been raised to feed guests even when I was furious with them, and some habits are very deep. My mother commented that the pad thai was good and asked where I'd ordered it from. I told her. She wrote it down in the notes app on her phone. We sat around my dining table and ate mostly in silence. My father tried twice more to return to the subject of the $50,000. I told him both times that I was still waiting on information. He was not accustomed to being made to wait, and his discomfort was visible. After dinner, Caleb asked if he could take the guest room. I told him he could sleep on the couch. I did not explain why. By 10 o'clock, I had heard back from all 3 lenders. 2 of them were willing to negotiate. The third, the fintech company, had a more complicated servicing structure, but Petra had sent me a follow-up text with a contact name and a suggested approach. And after a 40-minute phone call with a loan officer who was tired and professional, and eventually grateful to have a clean exit on a difficult account, that one came through too. The total I paid for the 3 loans was not $114,000. Distressed debt does not sell at face value. I will not tell you the exact number because it is not the point of this story, but I will tell you it was significantly less, enough less that what I spent was not money that materially changed my life, but enough that it was not a small decision either. What I had by 11 o'clock that night was 3 loan purchase agreements with my name on them. Caleb's debt was now Caleb's debt to me. I printed the documents at my desk while my family was in the other room. My father was watching something on his phone. My mother had fallen asleep on the couch. Caleb was in the bathroom. I sat at my desk and looked at the documents for a while. Then I made one more call. To an attorney friend. The kind of call you make at 11 p.m. when you need someone to tell you that what you're doing is legal and structured correctly. She was awake. She talked me through it. She said, "You know this is going to be a very interesting conversation tomorrow morning." I said yes. She said good luck and meant it. The next morning, I made breakfast. This is the detail that everyone always finds strange when I tell the story. But I think it's actually the most honest part. I made eggs and toast and fruit salad and poured coffee for everyone. And we sat at my kitchen table in the morning light like a normal family having a normal morning. My mother complimented the coffee. My father read the news on his phone. Caleb ate 3 pieces of toast. When everyone was done, I cleared the plates and then I sat back down and put the documents on the table. "I want to tell you what I did last night," I said. I explained it clearly and without drama. I had purchased Caleb's loans from the original creditors. The debt existed. It was not forgiven. It had not disappeared. But Caleb now owed the money to me rather than to 3 separate lending companies. I slid the first document to my father and waited while he read it. The expression that moved across his face went through several distinct phases. Confusion first. Then a dawning, reluctant comprehension. Then something harder to name. Not anger exactly, but something in the neighborhood of it. "You bought the debt," he said. "Yes, so Caleb owes you." "Yes, that's not the same as helping him." "I think it depends on your definition," I said. "The creditors are off his back. The collection pressure is gone. There are no more late fees accruing with 3 different companies. He has one debt now, to one person, at 0 interest." I paused. "The condition is that he meets with a financial advisor. I have a name, she's excellent. I'll pay for the first 3 sessions, and we set up a structured repayment plan together. Manageable monthly amounts. Realistic timeline." My father stared at me. "You don't trust us to manage this ourselves?" "I'm going to be honest with you," I said. "No, I don't. Not because of Caleb, because of me." I kept my voice very even. "You came here after 2 years of no contact and asked me for $50,000 in cash. And somewhere in that ask, I don't think anyone in this room considered that the last time money moved in this family, it went from my grandmother's estate into an account that wasn't mine, and no one has ever explained that to me or apologized for it." The silence was different this time. It was not the strategic silence of people waiting for something uncomfortable to pass. It was the silence of people who had been caught. My mother looked down at the table. My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I'm not asking for an explanation right now," I said. "I'm telling you why I made the decision I made. The $50,000 in cash was never going to happen. This is what I'm actually offering. Caleb's debt consolidated, collection resolved, breathing room to figure out his next step, and a path forward that has actual structure to it." I looked at Caleb. "If he wants it." Caleb had not moved since I started talking. He was looking at the documents in a way that was hard to read. "If I say no," he said finally. "Then I sell the loans," I said. "Or I don't, but that's the structure I'm offering." My father pushed back from the table slightly. "This isn't generosity, Zoe. This is control." "Dad," I said, "you came to my home without calling with suitcases and asked me for money after 2 years of treating me like I didn't exist. I'm trying very hard to respond to that in a way I won't be ashamed of. But I'm not going to pretend this is a normal situation or act like the history doesn't exist." Nobody said anything for a long moment. Then my mother said, quietly, "How much was Grandma's money?" I looked at her. "I don't know exactly," I said. "The attorney I consulted said it would have been difficult to recover. I let it go." I paused. "I'm still letting it go. That's not what this is about." She nodded, very slowly. Something in her face had shifted. Not all the way to something I recognized as remorse, but partway there, which was more than I had expected. Caleb signed the agreement that afternoon. He didn't do it enthusiastically. He sat at my kitchen table with the pages in front of him for a long time, reading through things slowly, asking a few questions I answered as simply and directly as I could. The financial advisor I had in mind was someone Petra had recommended, someone who worked specifically with people in their late 20s and early 30s, recovering from debt situations, someone without judgment in her approach. I told him her name. He looked her up on his phone. "She looks normal," he said. "She is normal," I said. "She's good." He signed. My father watched the signing from across the room with his arms crossed. When it was done, he said, "I hope you're satisfied." I thought about that for a second. "I think satisfied is the wrong word," I said. I'm relieved, I'm tired, and I need you all to check out of my apartment today because I have work tomorrow and this has been a lot. My mother blinked. We were going to stay a few days. I know, I said. I'm asking you not to. Another silence. We came a long way, my father said. I know you did, I said, and I'm asking you to go back. Not forever. But today. I need my home to be my home again. I booked them a hotel 6 blocks away. It was not a cheap hotel, and I paid for 2 nights without mentioning it, because they had spent money to get here, and because it felt like the right thing to do, and because I was very tired of keeping score, even as I was being forced to keep score. It is possible to understand exactly how you have been wronged and still choose not to weaponize it. I don't think that's weakness. I think that's the choice I wanted to be able to live with later. They left at 3 in the afternoon. My mother paused at the door and turned around, and for a moment I thought she was going to say something. Something real, something that would land differently than anything else that had been said in the last 24 hours. She said, "The kitchen is beautiful, by the way. Did you do the renovation yourself?" I said I had designed it and hired contractors. She nodded. "You always had a good eye," she said, and then she left. I stood in my kitchen after the door closed. The apartment was very quiet. Outside the window, the city kept moving, indifferent and enormous, which is one of the things I love about it. I made myself a fresh cup of coffee, finally hot, and stood at the window and drank it. The financial advisor met with Caleb for the first time about 3 weeks later. She called me afterward, not to share confidential information, just to say that the session had gone well, and that Caleb had been engaged and that she thought there was something to work with. I thanked her and marked the date for his first monthly payment in my calendar. It came. Not on the exact date, but within the week, and it was the right amount. I noted it in a spreadsheet I had made for exactly this purpose. No drama, no follow-up required. My mother texted me in November to say she hoped I was doing well. I responded the same day. A short, normal message, the kind of message two people send who are trying to find their way back to something without quite having the worth for it yet. My father has not reached out. I don't think he knows how. I'm not sure I need him to. Caleb and I have a phone call every few months now. Mostly practical. He updates me on his finances. I update him on the repayment schedule. But last month, he asked about the project in the South Bronx, and I told him about the rooftop garden, and he said it sounded really cool, and it was a small thing, but it was something. I have been asked, by the people I've told this story to, whether I regret how I handled it, whether I was too harsh, or not harsh enough, or whether I should have simply said no and closed the door and walked away. I think about that question honestly. The answer I keep coming back to is this. I didn't do what I did to punish anyone. I did it because it was the only version of help I could offer that also required the people I was helping to take me seriously. Not as an ATM. Not as the difficult one who chose the wrong path and got lucky anyway, but as a person who built something real, alone, and who has decided that she is allowed to have terms. My grandmother wanted me to have a start. I didn't get it the way she intended. I made my own start, and then I made another one, and then I made the one I'm standing in now. Some days that feels like enough. Most days, actually, it does. I've had a lot of time to sit with what happened, not to replay it. I'm not someone who replays things obsessively, but to actually understand it. The cause and the effect, the long chain of choices, mine and theirs, that led to my father sitting at my kitchen table, asking me for $50,000, like it was a reasonable thing to ask. Here's what I keep coming back to. The people who taught me the least about how to be in the world ended up teaching me the most, not intentionally, not because they were secretly wise, but because every door they closed, I had to learn to open something else instead. When my father said, "Fund it yourself," he probably thought he was punishing me. He wasn't. He was handing me the only education that actually sticks. The kind you earn when no one is coming to make it easier. I don't say that to be generous to him. I say it because it's true, and I've stopped needing the story to be something other than what it is. Caleb made choices, one after another, without ever being asked to sit with the consequences. Not because he's a bad person, I don't think he is, but because the people around him kept absorbing the impact before it could reach him. That's not love. It looks like love. It feels like love to the person doing it. But what it actually does is keep someone permanently young in the worst sense of the word, permanently certain that someone else will step in at the last moment. The debt wasn't his real problem. The debt was just where the pattern finally ran out of room, and me. I had to figure out what kind of person I wanted to be in that moment. Not abstractly. Concretely, at 11 o'clock at night, with loan documents on my screen and my family asleep in the next room. The version of me that simply said no and walked away would have been justified. I know that. But I also knew that I didn't want to spend the next decade being the person who walked away. I wanted to be the person who found a third option, the one that required everyone, including Caleb, to show up differently. That's the thing about integrity. It's not a feeling. It's a decision you make in the specific, unglamorous moments when you're tired and you've been wronged, and the easier path is right there in front of you. I'm not saying I chose perfectly. I'm saying I chose perfectly. I'm saying I chose deliberately. And I can live with that. The financial piece mattered, but it wasn't really about the money. It was about being taken seriously. About existing in my own family as someone with terms, not just as a resource. My grandmother wanted me to have a start. I didn't get it the way she meant it, but I built my own, and then I built another one. And what I have now, the work, the apartment, the rooftop garden that almost got cut twice, nobody handed me any of it. That's not a complaint, it's the thing I'm most certain of about myself. Caleb made his first payment within the week. It was a small amount. It was the right amount. I marked it in a spreadsheet without ceremony and went back to work. Some things take a long time to become what they're supposed to be. I think my family might be one of them. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm not closing the door either. That feels like the most honest place I know how to stand right now.